Hello and welcome to Press Pass, a new show on GNet TV's News Project. I'm Andrew McKeever, the news director here at GNet TV. It's my pleasure to be with you today, and also my pleasure to be with two good friends of mine who I'm going to introduce to you shortly. The show is about basically journalism and about coverage of local and regional events. We're going to focus on that during our approximately once a month editions here. So therefore, it's great to have with me today Jim Therian, who is a reporter with the Bennington Banner, Berkshire Eagle, and also VT Digger. And also Greg Sukenik, who is the editor of the Manchester Journal. Great to have you gentlemen with us today, and thanks very much for making the time to be here.
It's great to be here, Andrew.
So we're starting the show at an auspicious time, I think. By coincidence, it's about 1 year, almost to the day, when new ownership acquired the Banner, the Journal, the Eagle, and the Brattleboro Reformer. And it seems like a good time to kind of talk a little bit about how those changes have affected all the papers involved, and kind of just how local ownership, it seems, has returned to this area, in contrast to the national picture, where we're continuing to see that consolidation of newsrooms and papers and shrinking budgets and all of that sort of stuff. Greg, let me start with you. How has the new ownership affected you? You've been here since October now.
I've been here since October, and I do believe that the existence of the new ownership and what they had in mind is a big part of the reason that I'm here. Showed up in October. It was shortly after that we expanded the physical size of the newspaper, make it sort of a better, more credible looking product, sort of dispatch the newspaper junior size. We've also invested in, we've had a reporter covering both the North Shire and Bennington, so giving some coverage for both newspapers. And just overall, there's commitment to providing quality and to investing in community journalism. So, I mean, that's when I was considering career options, that was attractive to me. Mm-hmm. So that's part of the reason I'm here, and so far so good, I think. Yeah.
And Jim, you've been around a long time with the Banner and the Eagle. You've seen a lot of things come and go.
Well, that's one of it's a tremendous change since last April, I think. And like Greg, I worked at the Eagle. I worked there twice, and I've worked at the Banner twice, three times now. And now I'm in a position where it's funded partly by New England newspapers and Vermont Digger. So my articles appear in the various papers and Vermont Digger. This is a new position that they created, after they took over. I have to tell you, I was at, well, you know the situation because you were at the Journal then, with the former corporate owners. Right after the recession, I happened to be the editor at Bennington. And that's when things really started to go down rapidly, and people, cutting budgets, things like that. So I went down to the Eagle for the past 5 years before this opened up. But I was on vacation, and I knew there was something coming they were trying to sell the Eagle, the Banner, and the Reformer. I went on vacation, and I saw something online that said, Berkshire Eagle sold, and I said, which corporate entity is going to grab us up?
Which hedge fund is our new boss? Huh?
Yes.
Okay, but then I looked, and it was a local group with ties to Southern Berkshire, and they were going to be changing it, turning it into the old Eagle, which is privately owned.
Mm-hmm. Jumping in on that, I did work at the Berkshire Eagle for 5 years, from 1995 to 2000. Did work with Jim some. Grew up in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, so I learned to read reading the Berkshire Eagle. So it's an important institution to me. So when that purchase was about to happen, I saw that the Eagle was being purchased, and I had followed the corporate retrenchment, the sort of the number of cuts and the way the place had been squeezed over the 15 or so years since I'd left. I was like, oh no, here we go again. And so to discover that it was actually local ownership that certainly caught my attention, and had a lot to do with reaching out when they started looking for openings. I mean, the fact that there was going to be investment and that they had a stated goal of having the best newspapers their size in the country.
That's the goal.
Which is what the Eagle was in the 1970s.
Really was.
So that caught my interest and my imagination.
All right. Well, glad it has all worked out. And
I'd like to say one thing about Vermont Digger too, that they have expanded tremendously, and maybe around 20 people on the staff now.
Yeah, a lot more
in
reporters
editorial
there.
and writing, maybe more. I don't want to. They're changing it, and they've had a lot of new positions open up in the past 2 years. But they are now really a dominant force in state government, especially, and anything around the state. Now there are people all over, different sections,
And they could be counted on when you need things covered.
and they do things. They do things for all our papers.
Yes.
I mean, we have agreement with them to run their stories. So that's
Yeah.
quite an expansion too. So
changing
journalism
landscape.
journalism in some sections, some areas is down, but it's certainly starting to improve here.
Yeah.
Right.
They've been covering the David Shores murder case that occurred in Mount Tabor. And so
Right.
that's in Rutland. That's not something we could get to, but they're at every hearing on that. And so we're able to get that into the paper. And otherwise, that would be, we'd have to commit resources to go to Rutland to cover those. It's not realistic with a small staff. So that does allow us a lot of flexibility.
You probably remember trying to cover the State House with someone from here. You go up one day, you drive hundreds of miles, it seems like,
Right.
and you can only do a few things, but they have 4 or 5, maybe more people right there, plus people in different areas. So it really covers the whole state.
Partnership that is working out well for all.
Very well, yeah.
Well, let's dive into the local scene here. Jim, you had speaking of VT Digger and the banner, you had a couple of stories last week about the rather significant sounding Putnam redevelopment plan, $50 million plan to overhaul downtown Bennington around the Four Corners there. Tell us a little bit about that. Get us up to speed on what's going on with that. And there's another interesting aspect to this that might be of interest to many other towns, is this so-called TIF districts, or tax increment financing district, that might be used as a way to generate money for it.
Well, a TIF district is tax increment financing, and you form a district that you want to develop, and especially one that needs developing or is a little bit of a rundown area sometimes. But the state put a cap on those new ones 3 years ago. So Bennington and 5 or 6 other communities around the state are trying to have that lifted. And right now it's in the legislature, it's in conference. As far as I know, the latest I've heard is that they're going to approve some new ones. So that will be part of the package when if that happens. Bennington is ready to apply for a district for the Putnam project. And if people don't know where that is, that's the Putnam Hotel and 6 buildings on 4 acres right around there. It's a significant area at the Four Corners, so it's something that institutions like the hospital and the 2 colleges in town, Bennington College and Southern Vermont, and individuals have decided to focus on, and they're putting their money up and also going to be putting things in some of the buildings that they want to renovate or build in that area, like the hospital, and then there's housing components, there's retail. The old hotel would be something possibly with student or faculty housing for the colleges. And there's a lot they've got on the table. And
is it going to work?
Here's the thing, what I'm hearing is that, well, what I think sometimes is it's too much, it's a little bit out there, and then 5 minutes later I'm thinking, well, this is going to work. And at the meeting last week, a public presentation on it, they were pretty convincing that they're ready to go. They're close to buying the property from the Greenberg family. They've got a deal on that. How it rolls out over time and whether it goes to be 54 million, that's something that's
Remains
still in
to
the
be seen.
future, but it could really have a tremendous
sounds like a game
impact.
changer for downtown.
Well, that's
Bennington
what they call
if
it, yeah.
Comes to full fruition.
Oh, definitely. Bennington definitely could use that in the downtown.
Yeah, it'll be a real shot in the arm. Well, Greg, let's travel northwards up here to the North Shire and let you bring us up to speed here on what's going on with the Manchester Planning Commission. They had well, they were involved in a couple of meetings earlier this week up here on Monday night. Rolled out their new zoning map and shared that with the audience there. And then on Tuesday, the next day at the Select Board meeting, was the second public hearing of the new town plan, which they had obviously been deeply involved with. Select Board approved that, so the Planning Commission's been kind of busy.
They certainly have, Andrew. Now, it's interesting, the town, they're sort of related, but the town plan really is where the sort of the, while it doesn't have regulatory authority, it does inform where zoning is going. So I'm going to start with the town plan first. Now, it's under Vermont statute, it's towns that are encouraged to have town plans that are revised once every 5 years, though it's going to go after 8 years after, once every 8 years after this. The interesting thing about the town plan is really a revision of the town plan that they had in place before. But what this one does is it adds, at the behest of the state, it adds sections on renewable energy. That's important so that when Vermont is looking for places to put renewable energy projects, if the town has a plan that's been approved by the Regional Planning Commission and the state, then that plan is given substantial deference rather than due consideration. These are terms of art. I've heard them. If you go to enough of these hearings, you're able to use them in such a way that makes you look smart.
Yep.
So renewable energy, resource, aquifer protection, for example, flood resilience, which is a big consideration here after Irene. Those are all woven into the new town plan that was adopted by the Select Board on Tuesday night. Also involved were some economic development interests, and this is where sort of we'll segue from that to zoning. Now the town has been interested in a while in building up its historic core, Manchester Center, Factory Point for those of you in the audience who are a little older, and to increasing the density there and trying to build up more workforce housing. Manchester has businesses that would like to grow and stay, but being able to, having families being able to move to Manchester, into the Manchester area, and be able to have housing where they can afford to live that's been a challenge. So we're talking about sort of what the plan suggests and what the zoning attempts to encourage. Again, these are separate, but the zoning is the ordinance that more or less enforces the ideas in the town plan. So we're talking about increasing density of multi-use and residential in the town area and the areas around the town center. We're also talking about increasing the minimum acreage for subdivisions on the outskirts. So the attempt is to develop the center core and to try to maintain the rural character of the entrances into town and the sort of its agricultural and country feel, if you will. So the town plan is adopted now. So now we have the rollout of the zoning ordinance in the map. That's in. You'll find a copy of that, complete with color codes, in this week's journal. Now, zoning regulations are not. It's not easy reading, but at the same time, it's fairly important. And the Planning Commission wanted to get that out there and start getting the conversation started for people who haven't been part of it so far, because. I mean, for landowners who are interested or for people who are looking for opportunity to invest in a particular business, light industrial, and by industrial I don't mean making widgets, but for example, I mean, that could apply to a facility that makes a food product and then sells it on the premises. So we're talking about, we're not talking about a brewery or a factory. We're sort of really talking about making things, but we're also talking about office space and something along the lines of the Vermont Country Store facility on Route 7A north of town. So that plan is out there, and that still has some time to be reviewed, and that has not gone through the hearing process. It still remains a draft. Yeah. So yes, the Planning Commission has been very busy.
I think they're looking at trying to wrap that up by the end of this year, is what I seem to recall hearing. So meanwhile, at the same time, you and I were both at the same meeting, the Sunderland Select Board, a week ago, last Monday. when we heard some interesting news about the Sunderland Planning Commission, and I'll let you carry the tale on from there. Where
It's an interesting story, and one that doesn't really have sort of a neat ending.
it's still in it,
It's still very much in progress. So Sunderland, for those who might not know, is a small town just in between Arlington and Manchester, less than 1,000 people, and has a number of vacancies and some volunteer positions in town, as well as a shortage in the select board of one person, and a shortage of one person on the planning board as well. So after an executive session, the select board unanimously voted to rescind the appointment of one of the planning board members. Subsequently, 2 of the remaining planning board members resigned. So now we have one planning board member left.
Who was the chairman?
Who was the chairman, but now is definitely the chairman.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing there is that there's not a whole lot in the way of explanation as to what happened. And given the sort of absence of information that sort of would lead one to speculate, which is something I'm not going to do, trying to be in the fact business rather than the guessing business. That said, the interesting thing about that is that the law with regards to planning board members, and planning board instead of planning commissions or design review boards, is sort of a very specific entity in Vermont law. All it takes to remove a member of a planning board in Vermont is the unanimous vote of the select board. It's absolutely silent on cause. So as to why that happened, don't know. And so far, everyone involved has been rather silent about it. So the thing is, Sunderland has a number of things on the horizon. They're going to need the review of a planning board. It is also in the process of revising its zoning ordinances. There are a couple of projects coming up, economic development projects coming up in the horizon. There's interest in the Basketville property. There's also, apparently, there's been reports of interest in the Sunderland Arcady Lodge. So, I mean, for a small town, that's a fair amount of lifting to do.
Right.
So, apparently, what can happen is that members of the select board can temporarily join the planning board. But I think for the citizens of Sunderland, I mean, they don't get a rebate on their taxes if they have fewer people at town hall. So they deserve to have full representation. And one wonders if this might spark more interest in people getting involved.
Of course, Sunderland's not the only town where there are vacancies in these public offices.
That's definite.
We're seeing a lot of pressure on some of these positions.
Even medium-sized places.
Yeah.
Sure.
Some of the towns like Dorset going to an assessor as opposed to a lister,
Yeah.
changes like that going on.
And I wish that they could find a way to share, because I think that would be an advantage, but I don't think that ever has worked out to try to propose something like that.
We're aware of those
county,
kinds of
county
initiatives in
government.
Massachusetts where we're from, but
Yeah.
Local control still rules, I think, at least in the hearts anyway of a lot
Yeah,
of folks.
but it is difficult, and if you hire someone who's a professional, it's going to be expensive. Pownell right now is finally thinking about town administrator. You know, they don't have that. Do you have that in Sunderland?
No.
That's really
we
makes a
do
big
not.
difference.
They just do a select board.
Manchester and Dorset both have
Dorset,
managers.
yeah.
They both also moved to assessors from boards of listers.
Right, yeah.
Now, the listers is one area where I think Sunderland has 1 or 2 vacancies. There is an advantage to having an assessor, though, because you do have more regular hours, and you
Oh,
have
sure.
someone who's trained and feels like they can step into the position and sort of know what they're doing. I mean, it might very well be that average people want to get involved, but aside from the time commitment, the busyness of 21st century life, there's also, well, I don't know anything about auditing. How am I, and I don't think anyone wants to be in a position where they're,
In over their head.
in over their heads.
Well, they have to
So-
they have to go to training, and by
Yes.
that time, it's 2 or 3 years before they really get
Sure.
to be.
But the Vermont League of Cities and Towns is working on this problem.
They do have, yeah.
Plus, we're seeing echoes of that in things like volunteer fire departments as
Oh,
well.
sure.
Where for a long time now, there's been shortages of people.
An ambulance-
And an aging
ambulance.
factor as well, where the demographics of a lot of these volunteer fire departments you've got really older people than might be considered normal or desirable.
Right?
But for a select board member, I mean, really, just talking to the chairman of the select board in Sunderland, Mark Hyde. I mean, there's training you go to, and then the time commitment really doesn't prove to be that big. I mean, you do sort of face the the old bromide about no good deed goes unpunished when you're in public service,
Yeah.
but it's important for these towns to be able to have folks who can step up and make decisions and lead.
Sure.
Right.
Jim, let's stay in Manchester. You had a story earlier this week, or excuse me, last week, about the Bromley Brook appeal, or the appeal of a town permit that was given to the new, would-be owners of the Bromley Brook, a former residential facility for seniors. But then a curveball got thrown.
Well, a group with Kate Burton as Heaton, sorry, as the lead appellant, I guess, and I think 9 other people are appealing a zoning decision to uphold the zoning officer's decision to give them a permit. And this is a group from, well, they have one other nursing home, they said, in Williamstown, Vermont. And they want to return that to the same
'Cause originally,
use they had.
before it was Bromley Brook School,
Right,
it was the Oak Knoll facility or something like that.
Right, and then it became something else, and then the school.
Christian
and then-
Scientists were in it for a while. And
Yeah, well,
interesting collection.
the town didn't seem, the town officials didn't seem to have a problem with it, and now it's being appealed to environmental court, and the appeal notice is in, but they haven't put their arguments in if they're going to be different or anything. I think that's got to be in by May 18th.
I think
So I'm looking for that. But the person, one of the people who is an investor in the project, told me that she has the feeling that it's mostly a delay to try to delay the project. So we'll see what happens, but I haven't heard from the other side.
I was just wondering, a lot of cases go to environmental court and they stay there a very long time. It used to be
That's what they were
the court
worried
was kind of
about.
understaffed, and
That's what they're worried
it just takes a
about.
very long time to make decisions. Meanwhile, legal fees pile up, other costs pile up, and you're not making any money out of your new investment.
Well, on the other hand, you could go to the Supreme Court after that.
Yeah, I mean,
So
it may not
it's-
be the end of the road.
Yeah, and here you have something, I think what the argument would be for the people who want to put this in, is that this is sitting there. You could be getting tax revenue off of this for the town
There are jobs to be
For the
had.
jobs,
and
yeah.
jobs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's where that is. I don't know if it'll be resolved, and maybe there'll be a settlement. But for now, that's where it is, and they're going to have their arguments in by the 18th.
Okay. Well, in the few minutes we got left, Greg, I wanted to give you a chance to tell us a little bit about what's going to be in this week's journal. I know you've got one story in about Wendy Cram,
Yes.
very well-known local resident who passed away recently.
Sure. Our new reporter, Sharice Madigan, who is from Bennington and living in Manchester, so she's got the
Covering all
Shires
bases,
covered. Had a profile of the late Wendy Cram, who is a World War II veteran, a ski instructor, avid bicyclist, a community leader, someone who I believe he was also part of the former Chamber of Commerce, or Manchester in the Mountains Chamber of Commerce as well. And just sort of the outpouring in that story as a lot of people have, I don't know if we're able to find anyone to say anything negative about the man. He passed away last week at the age of 96, and by all accounts has just lived a very remarkable life. We also have, start with the zoning map, as previously mentioned. We've also, we're working on a project with the banner where we're honoring high school student athletes. And we're going to have a big gala on Tuesday, June 27th at Bennington College. And so we're rolling out the honorees for various sports, for Team of the Year, for Athlete of the Year, boys and girls sports, VPA, Vermont Principals Association sanctioned sports. And we're also going to have some special awards at that, and also a special guest, Olympic 3-time gold medalist Gabby Douglas is going to be our guest at that. So, so that we're continuing to roll those out on a weekly basis, and that's something that's kind of one of the new initiatives from our ownership, to try to build some community involvement for the papers as well by holding events such as these.
Yeah.
And I think it's just going to be a lot of fun.
Great.
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay.
Well, the presentations have been very nicely done with the athletes on a full page.
Sure.
And I see we also have the governor coming to speak at Burn.
That's right. I would be remiss if I didn't
Kinda
mention
cool.
Governor Phil Scott coming to Burton Academy, a return visit for Governor Scott.
Right, he was there
as candidate
October
Phil
or
Scott in
whatever.
October.
Yeah. It's interesting because as we're sitting here today on Thursday, May 11th, the legislature is trying to adjourn. They were trying to get out of
I was
town
just
last
checking
week.
my phone earlier, and I haven't heard any updates. But
Our show is probably going to focus a lot on local and countywide issues. Maybe we'll take a peek at things going on in Windham County from time to time. We're probably not going to wander up to Montpelier too often. But just in closing, it's they have a lot on their plate in the last couple of days between the statewide teachers contract proposal that theoretically might save $26 million, or maybe not, depending on how you want to crunch the numbers. The historic marijuana bill passed the legislature yesterday. First state legislature to pass such a bill. All the other 8 or 9 states that have legalized in one form or another recreational marijuana use did it by a voter referendum. It's interesting to me that Dick Sears is such a leading proponent of this, or one of our state senators.
well, I think it's partly because he's on Judiciary Committee. And he's the chairman still, I think, and he's been in favor of decriminalization in a lot of areas and alternative ideas for not jailing people, basically. And I think this could have that type of effect. Stop charging people, take the pressure off, not make it a crime at all. Some other things he's more seems to be more law and order on, but on this one he definitely feels that this is the way to go. And plus, he's talking about the effects in Massachusetts if they fully implement their referendum imposed.
Definitely is.
They're working out the exact regulations on that, but they could have it, and Vermont would be losing the revenue. I know
Right.
he's mentioned that too as a
Well,
prime
it's interesting.
reason.
It's interesting to me that Vermont being the first legislature to do this, because I mean, this is something that the Vermont legislature and the state, both the House and the state Senate, have been talking about for a while. The Senate being a little more interested than the House, but it's been a sort of a deliberative process, and sort of moving forward just by drips and drabs. And one wondered if the House was ever going to go along, and then it was sort of surprisingly it did.
Yeah, well, because
And
the
then
Senate-
we're still only talking about possession. We're not talking about
Right.
we're not talking about taxing and regulation.
Right, that's
Which I think. So
another
one
big
wonders,
step.
that's kind of the eventual end game, especially if that's what Massachusetts is going to be doing. But this also be interested to see if the governor. This
Signs
might or
it.
might have not have happened by the time this
Right.
airs. So this might be, whether he decides to go along with it or not. I know he's concerned about being able to stop and detain people who are who are driving while stoned, which is not a good idea. We'll see where that goes.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's kind of said he's not, unalterably opposed to it forever and ever, but it's not one of the high priorities.
Definitely not
the
his
state right
priority.
now.
No.
So
And
I wondered if some people actually are thinking that he will veto this, and if this is any kind of a bargaining chip between the Senate and the
because there are a few other balls in play.
Yeah, there's
with
other
the
things
Sure.
going on
budget
too.
and
Yeah.
a few little items like
But
that.
that's all speculation.
Well, maybe he'll get to explain this all to us in June when he comes
That's a
down,
good
down
idea.
here and
Yeah.
Sure.
tells the graduates what to do. Now that they've finished this little milestone in their lives. Well, gentlemen, I think there's probably a lot more we can all talk about, but we're just about out of time. But I want to thank you again, both for being here. Jim Therian,
Thank you.
reporter for the Banner, the Eagle, and VT Digger, Greg Sukenik, editor of the Manchester Journal.
Thank you.
And thank all of you for watching as well. We hope you found the show interesting. We're going to be trying to do this about once a month. We'll probably have these two distinguished gentlemen back again at some point or another to kind of share their wisdom with us. But meanwhile, thanks for watching. This has been the Press Pass on GNAT TV's News Project. Have a great day.